Okay, so today we're going to talk about creating our review of literature. The questions that will guide us in helping to do that is, what is a synthesis of the literature? What resources are available for searching for information to help us write? What processes can be used to effectively search? What are different types of literature that are read? And is there a recommended process for reading a research article? How can I organize and summarize all of this information I'm going to be looking at? And how do I organize the review of literature? So the sources of information. When you're reviewing the literature, it allows you to learn what others have said, and that's very important. So what are the experts saying? It should occur after the problem of practice or after your research question has been identified. However, I think it's just as important to look at some literature when you're formulating your question, and that's why I have in your rationale, I say to cite a couple research articles or studies. It provides different approaches for answering your question, maybe the same approach that you're going to use or a similar approach or questions. It can impact your motivation and interest level. It shows whether a topic is well researched or it's a brand new area of study. So for example, we're seeing a lot more research in the area of mindfulness in the classroom, but that's a newer area of study. It's useful for finding additional experts or teachers to answer questions and provide guidance throughout your study. If you find an expert and there's an email, I'd encourage you to email that person if you needed to. And it tells you if there's a limited research available on your particular question. So what is synthesis of the literature? What is review of literature? By definition, it's the culmination of all the information you've gathered about your research question. The purpose of it is that it describes why your topic that you want to study is significant. It provides background information on the topic, and it scaffolds between what is known and what is being studied. So essentially it gives the audience that's reading your work, it sets up your research study and question. The types of resources or literature that you're going to look at, certainly you're going to be looking at literature that has been done in the classroom, literature that provides strategies or techniques, literature that's not really experimental per se, and it's not written to necessarily prove anything or develop a deep theoretical knowledge. It fulfills the need for finding strategies for direct classroom application. It requires active reflection and thought, and it may link certainly theories and action and describes the implementation of deliberate steps to examine a topic. So your action research paper will have essentially 5 components to it. It will have your abstract. It will then have your review of literature. It will have your methods section, your results section, and your discussion and our implications section, and finally your reference list. So right here is how your paper will be organized, and right now we're talking about the very beginning, our review of literature. You want to make sure that the literature you review for your paper is peer-reviewed. So what is peer-reviewed? It's academic in nature. It's examined by experts in the field that can speak to the topic area, and it meets certain levels of quality and scholarship, and so there's a higher quality of work that's examined. You may certainly look at both primary and secondary sources. So what's a primary source? So a primary source is a description of the research that was written by the person or persons who researched, and it's a document that by the people who participated in it. Secondary sources, there's a ton of them, of course, and that's it's an important document, and they cite a study. Okay, so they're not the primary researchers, but they cite it. You need to make sure that you understand how to document both primary and secondary sources using APA. So locating this information. Obviously, many of us use online And certainly I think that's going to be your first place to go is online. Once you find things, you have to develop your system for keeping track, because you're going to look at a lot of research that you may definitely use. So you're going to put it in your definitely used category, some that you may use, and others that you're just going to not use at all. So how can you organize yourself? In the past, when we printed everything out, I used to have piles. Definitely use, maybe use, don't use at all. But make sure that you have your organization in terms of all of your resources. We all use Google Scholar. That's an excellent site. It gives us academic papers. We can put in time period, our citations. It tells us how many times something has been cited, whether or not it's really a strong research study that's used and cited by a lot of people, and whether or not we can download that research. So here's an example of a screenshot of a Google search. Our university library is excellent, and I would say that that should be your go-to as well. And why? Because it has multiple databases. So it has psych databases and ERIC. And also what I like about our university library, and I use it a lot, is the chat feature. So if I'm looking for something in particular and I can't find it, I chat with a librarian. Here's ERIC, and we know that that's an online repository of research and information. A lot of different publication types are there. Your searches can be refined just like any other search, and you can use multiple keywords or descriptors, and you can potentially download full text as well. ERIC also is part of the university library system. And here's a screenshot of what you might find by using the ERIC database. There's tons of sources of information, but you need to just make sure whatever you use, it is peer-reviewed and academic in nature. So for example, not Time magazine. So you're going to then select your relevant resources. The best thing to do is first is to take a look at the abstract. Is it in line with your topic? Look at the methodology. Is there something similar or the same about your method? What are the findings? This will help you to also potentially shape your study as well. You can also look to things like surveys that were already established, a design that they used, and you can replicate that. You want to organize your information. Again, this is just an example. You have your own organization system that you'll develop. When you write a review of literature, the best thing to think about is an upside down triangle, or I say a V. You need to make sure you're moving from broad to narrow. So the studies that you find maybe start out with just defining the population and the concept. Then you look at actual studies and cite them that are very similar or the same as to what you're going to be doing. And then you write your conclusion of how your study may extend what is currently known on the topic. But certainly a good transition into the methods section is saying something like, the purpose of the present study is, and then whatever it is, restating your research question. So here's that example of the upside down triangle. You want to develop your plan, all right? So first thing is identifying all your sources. It is important to, when you write, because writing is hard for all of us, and every single paper goes through multiple drafts. So set aside time for writing. And some days will be better than others, but you need to set aside that time. Keep track of where your resources are. Sometimes people create an outline. I do not. I'm sort of one of these writing, cutting, copying, and pasting persons. But you do what's best for you. Okay, so are you ready to do it? Have you located your research studies? Have you read enough in the literature? Do you know what people are saying about your topic? Have you read enough to build a foundation for your method section? Have you organized yourself? Have you said, there's a gap here. I need to look a little bit harder in the literature? Have you developed a method of organization that represents the information you collected from multiple sources and placed it in your own words so that you're not plagiarizing any work? Have you recorded your personal reflections regarding the literature? Have you reviewed your research question in light of the information that you found? And that takes us through review of literature.